Hey, everybody out there. Paul Craig Roberts back again with us today to talk about an interesting and kind of an amusing topic, although it's really not funny. It involves the destruction of Western civilization. Now, it's already underway here with the immigrant invaders, as Paul terms it, and even worse in Europe, where it's really underway. But now there's a new threat, just as severe, that may really spell the end a lot sooner, and that is liberated women who are tossing aside family and concentrating on the joy of sex. So, Paul, tell us about this new threat now combined with the immigrant invaders.
Okay, it's a tragedy. Um, in a recent issue of the City Journal, um, there was an article um, about this new development, the No Wives Club, which now has a number of successful female authors who have made a case that middle-aged wives should dump their husbands and children and become promiscuous harlots. That this is true self-love and the true way to happiness. And some of these people have made $1 million off these books. And it struck me as uh, extraordinary. I was trying to imagine my mother or one of my grandmothers or aunts reading such a book and not being scandalized. And it told me there's been a huge change in attitudes that are not good for
Even
the
among grandmothers,
continuation of society.
even among grandmothers today, right?
Even, right. So uh, most of these um, women advocating that the happy role for woman is harlot or middle-aged. And they say they just can't take a situation in which they're supposed to love husbands and children more than themselves. So it is sold, as I understand it, and it's so odd. It's not particularly easy for a person in my generation to understand. But as I understand it, what is now important to feminists is that they understand and find true love, which is self-love. Well, if the result is women find families a distraction or a hindrance, it's a hindrance to self-love. And so if this aspect of feminism spreads like all the other aspects have, there'll simply not be any more white race.
More children, right? So,
Or, or if there is, it'll be fatherless children, like has happened to the Black family. You know, we talked about this last time. I think Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the Democrat senator from New York, the well-known Harvard professor, who pointed out what had become of the Black family and the replacement of fathers with sons who don't know who the father is. And so it's just another aspect of societal collapse. Now, um, it's probably every bit as threatening as the immigrant invaders. You see, Jean Raspail, who developed this theme, the Camp of the Saints, in 1973, he saw it in terms of the invasions of non-European peoples into Europe who were unopposed because the Europeans had so much colonial guilt. Oh, these poor people, we have to give them everything. You know, the typical white American liberal mentality. And that was his account. And of course, this has been happening. But we see we now have this new dimension, this feminist, which attacks the notion of the family. And so I don't quite know what are the building blocks for society. I mean, it seems to me the family's the basic one. And if that's now to be dismantled by the feminists, then this is a second assault. And of course, there's a third assault. And it is probably even more dangerous. And this assault is coming from, again, white liberals. I don't know if I could say largely women, but women and men, white liberals, who are dedicated to the proposition that every white person, no matter how liberal, is a dangerous racist, and that even the nicest white liberals um, are dangerous racists. You may have heard of the book White Fragility.
Yeah.
Robin DiAngelo, who wrote that, has now written one called Nice Racism. And what this makes clear is that the white liberals who thought they were now uh, clear of any blame or charge of racism because they supported DEI, they supported all kinds of university admission, employment promotion preferences for blacks. They support not holding them accountable for crimes uh, with the same energy or determination that whites are. The release of dangerous criminals. They've done all of this, and it's now all institutionalized. Plus, we've had a whole range of new uh, uh, university degrees, you know, gender studies, black studies, feminist, there's endless. And it's all nonsense stuff. And it's crowded out the real curriculum, which you can't teach anymore because it's racist. You
Yeah.
can't teach English literature because all of the authors are racist and anti-Semitic as well. So you can't teach Shakespeare.
Yeah.
You can't kids can't read Mark Twain, Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer.
Right.
The entire corpus of Western literature is just off limits, so it can't be taught. And the teacher that teaches it is accused of perpetrating racism and racist attitudes. Well, uh, these woke people like this DiAngelo freak, how can you accuse people of perpetrating something when it's just innate in them? No, you don't need to perpetrate it. It's there without being perpetrated. And according to her, you can't do anything about it. And so what do you do about correcting racism when all the whites are racist, but they can't get it out of their system? The only solution is extermination. Now, some of them have already reached that point. You may remember a few years ago, there was that fellow at Harvard who wrote in the student newspaper that white people had to all be killed.
Yeah.
He was some sort of graduate assistant or a lecturer or something, some lower rank, but he felt confident that he could say that. And that was some years ago. So uh, the white liberals are now learning that they can't escape the charge, no matter how much they genuflect, no matter um, uh, what rights they give up. If they'll accept second class status in law, and that's not enough. So the subtitle of Robin DiAngelo's latest is How Progressive White People Perpetrate Racial Harm. So the liberals can't escape, and I don't know whether this will help wake them up or not. But according to D'Angelo, these nice racists are even worse than the Ku Klux Klan
Yeah. So
because,
the only solution is self-extermination, right? I mean, if you're going to do the right thing, you have to eliminate yourself. And Paul, underlying this also is there's no longer an encouragement or requirement to assimilate. Now, at the late 1800s, early turn of the century, the European immigrants that came here from all different countries, speaking different languages, but they came with Western values. And they were, by and large, very anxious to assimilate and to have their kids assimilate and become true Americans and not even teach them the native tongue of the countries they came from. But that's all changed now. You don't have to assimilate because you're assimilating to white culture, which is oppressing you. And so, I mean, and that in itself is reinforcing all this other matrix that we've got.
yeah, if you assimilate as you're submitting to cultural hegemony.
Yeah.
And and moreover, they come in such numbers that they have their own communities. They don't need to assimilate.
Now, for people not
Used
familiar
to,
with for people not familiar with the novel Camp of the Saints, explain that briefly, what that's about, and how predictive it has become concerning France.
well, it's about um, a fleet of decrepit old ships carrying 1 million or 2 million Indians from India. Um, leave India and they have announced they're headed for the coast of France, the Mediterranean coast of France, and that they intend to come into the country and um, live. And by the time the ships get there, the French liberals have broken down any resistance to the invasion by making people feel so guilty, by making the government feel so guilty, even by making the military feel so guilty that these people are allowed simply to walk in and take over the country, which they do. And their champions, the white French ethnicity that championed them, are the first ones who are raped and killed.
Yeah.
And, and they quickly pass a law that no French ethnic can marry another French ethnic. No white people can marry or or produce a child. And so they have the white race bred out of existence. And this is not confined to France. The same guilt overwhelms all of Europe, and they all fall, they all succumb, and even the Soviet Union. So there are literally no more white people, none. Uh, Now, what we have seen with the uh, lack of any opposition to the overrunning of Europe and the United States, with third world immigrants who don't assimilate, uh, it, the same kind of acceptance of being overrun, the same words, the same behaviors, exactly parallels what's in the book.
Yeah.
So if you read the book, which is now more than a half century old, it reads just like what's happening right now.
Yeah.
It's the same kinds of apologies for them. You may remember when the first great wave hit Germany, the German government had thousands of German women out there greeting the immigrant invaders, welcoming them, and uh, and well, this all happened in his novel. So I think it's the most prescient novel that's ever been written
Yeah, not 73, right? It came out in 1973, I believe.
in French, and I think it came out in English in 75 or 76.
Yeah, and you said also what's already happening in terms of accepting the values of foreign culture, no matter what it is. We're saying one of the Nordic countries, when a immigrant rapes a woman, they're not prosecuted because it's considered part of their culture. So it's okay. I mean, that's actually happening now.
Yeah, that's actually happening. I've written about it. We may have talked about it. That's actually happening. Um, and I think part of it is that the governments who most supported the invasion of their own countries, I don't want to admit it was a mistake.
Yeah,
So they don't count it as crime because, and the same thing happened in England. Remember? For 30 years, it was suppressed by the Home Secretary, regardless of the government being Labour or Tory. The mass gang rape of British children, female children, the collection of them in rape brothels, it was suppressed for 30 years
yeah, yeah,
because they didn't want to admit that they had screwed up. Like we were talking the other day, I think, about what was going on right now in the welfare
yeah.
scamming in Minnesota.
Right.
The governor knew about it, but he couldn't do anything about it because these are programs associated with the poor. And if you try to do something about it, it looks like you're attacking the poor.
Yeah,
So um, it, it, white society is simply indefensible. And what Robin DiAngelo is pointing out is, doesn't matter how nice you are, you're a racist.
yeah. You can't help it. It's genetic.
Yeah,
And
it's uh, so uh, and so you have these three assaults,
yeah,
and they're all achieving the same end. Um, I just read that the United States now has 42 Muslim mayors. So there are now Muslims who are mayors in 42 cities, and some of these of American cities have amazingly high concentrations. For example, Dearborn, Michigan, now has a majority Muslim population.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's a Hamtramck, which is there too. But all kinds of cities do, even Atlanta, Georgia,
Yeah.
New York, Los Angeles, Dallas, Houston. So, and if you look at names now of corporate executives, they're increasingly Muslim and Indian.
Yeah.
The head of Microsoft's artificial intelligence, the chief of artificial intelligence for Microsoft, is a Muslim.
Yeah.
And so he's not Jack Smith. Uh, now, some of these things, Larry, are quite amazing. Let's see. We have a person named Eric Fasson, and this person is a lecturer at the Institute of Gender Studies at the University of Geneva in Switzerland, of all places. Okay, now here's how he is described. He is an avowed intersectional activist with Islamo-leftist tendencies. He notably advocates the idea that discrimination does not even have to be demonstrated if a white person is present.
It's automatic. Yeah.
Now, look, you have to understand, he is not a rarity.
Yeah.
He is the majority of university faculties. Listen to some of these studies. We have Black studies, whiteness studies, Chicano studies, gender studies, queer studies, trans studies, disability studies. It's endless.
Okay.
Well, now think about all the people it takes to be in a department.
Yeah.
So there's no more classics. There's no more English literature.
Yeah. You said in your article, Paul, that the way this is going, by the end of this century, the only white people will be exhibits in zoos to remind the non-white dominant population of the oppressors that they once had and
Yeah.
eliminated, and now confined the few remaining specimens of the species to zoos.
Yeah.
Even that doesn't seem far-fetched as a possibility anymore.
No, we're facing civilizational erasure.
Yeah.
All of the white ethnicities, all of Europe, United States, we're talking about simply erasing a civilization. And most of the work is not done by the immigrant invaders, like in Jean Raspail's book. It's done by the white liberals who have spent generations exposing the evils and crimes of Western civilization. Slavery, colonialism, it's just endless. And that's, it used to, when you went to a university, In fact, any public school, starting off with the first grade, all the way through, uh, it was enculturating you into your culture. This is your culture. This is our achievements. This is the art. Here's the literature. Uh, here are the successes. Now there are no successes.
Yeah.
There's only failures and evil. And I find this remarkable that the Israelis are completely shielded from this. They can wipe out Palestine and nobody can say anything about it. But if you try to call attention to the erasure of white Western civilization, it just proves you're a racist.
Yeah,
It proves you a fragile white person.
yeah, and we discussed this before, where what they're doing now is equating a protest against Israel's policies concerning the Palestinians or other policies. They're equating that with violence and trying to make that illegal. So again, that erases the First Amendment. You can no longer say anything critical of Israel,
Yeah.
or it's terroristic, it's inciting violence and all that. I mean, so once you get that started, then that's real speech control about anything that they decide to control. You know, where does it stop?
Well, I think it stops with Israel because you can say anything you want about white people, just as all these white liberals say. You know, most of the actions against whites don't really come from the immigrant invaders. It comes from the white liberal intellectuals.
Right.
Um, uh, you know, they impose DEI, which is a way of wiping out merit. You know, we're not going to appoint you on merit because you're white, so we're going to appoint on DEI. So that means you don't qualify for DEI because you're privileged.
Yeah.
So it's a it's a real serious situation, and I've pointed out for years that ever since the 1964 Civil Rights Act was stood on its head, white people, especially white heterosexual men, have been second-class citizens in law
Yeah.
because they can be discriminated against in university admission, in employment, in promotions. And in fact, for the longest time, the federal government forced firms and universities to discriminate against white men in order to prove that they had affirmative action.
Yeah.
So that, 1964, that's more than 50 years ago. So we've had for a half a century, more than a half a century, white American males are second-class citizens in law, which is a total violation of the Constitution and certainly the 14th Amendment, which requires equal treatment under the law. But once Bloomrosen, who was the main official at the EEOC, ignored the statutory language of the Civil Rights Act, which explicitly prohibits any racial quotas. Once he stood it on his head and created the racial quotas, nobody did anything about it.
Yeah.
Nobody said, well, look, the law says the opposite of what you're doing. But I wrote a whole book about it. It got fantastic reviews. The New York Times reviewed it twice. Everybody liked it. Nothing happened. Nothing happened.
What was the name?
So, but think about it, Larry. We're talking about 50 years. So it's now normal. and it has been for 50 years. White males are born in a system where it's normal for them to be discriminated against.
Yeah.
They don't, they've never experienced, anybody under 50 years old has never experienced equal rights if he's a white male. He's never, and nobody says a word about it. Instead, we're told that we're all irredeemable racists who in the way of progress. And uh,
What was the name
now
of that? What was the name of the
that's
book?
what it shows an amazing weakness of white people. They're so weak, they can't see their peril, they can't defend themselves. Um, they'll all jump on anybody, boots first. If he says anything that looks like being racist. And so if they're unable and unwilling, how do they survive? They can't. There's no way they can survive. It's just so anyhow, go ahead.
What was the name of that? What was the name of that book that you're referring to, Paul, that you wrote?
This is called Nice Racism. Her first one was White Fragility.
No, no, the book that you wrote that got fantastic.
Oh, it was called The New Color Line.
Yeah, yeah,
The New Color Line. Um, Henry Regnery published it. He said it was the most important book his firm had ever published in its entire history. And it got rave reviews all over because it's documented. It's just tells how it happened and what the consequences. You could already see the consequences. How old is the book? I don't know, 20, 30 years? I can't. I'd have to go get a copy and look at its copyright date. And it, um, it did really good. They brought out a paperback, and then all of a sudden went silent. Somebody stepped in and killed it. And um, there's no reference to it.
yeah.
It's like it's been erased.
Paul, you point out also in your the writings about what we're talking about today that a good example of an independent, strong-willed woman who is putting family preservation first and not sex is Beth Dutton, the character in Yellowstone.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. For those who haven't,
Uh,
those who haven't seen, you're missing a great character.
um, well, you see, I never watched the Yellowstone series, and I only learned of it really recently when somebody sent me a clip from one of the episodes, and there she was in action, and I said, I can't believe this because here is feminism working in the right way.
Yeah,
And there are these billionaire real estate developers, and they come in and they're going to destroy the community, and including her family's ranch. They want all the property. It's quite a large thing and a large ranch, and so she tells them that you better get out of town now while you can still afford a bus ticket. She says, you see, you are the trailer park and I'm the tornado.
great.
And she bankrupts them all.
Yeah,
She destroys all of them. And they have, the Duttons have another habit of taking people to the train station.
yeah, right. a euphemism for where you put the bodies.
And they take a lot of them to the train station. And it, it it's it's unreal, but you wish something like this could happen.
Well, Paul, this is something I've been mentioning closer to where I live in the Scranton area of Pennsylvania. The data centers now are descending en masse in this area. They've targeted this area because it's an area where the politicians are easily bought off, compromised. The restrictions, you could sweep them away, and it's easy pickings here, and it's a depressed area to begin with. It was raped during the days of the coal mines, exploited labor. The people, the owners made out well, and the people got crumbs. The early steel mills, all that. Now, the new rape of this land here in the Scranton area of Pennsylvania is going to be these data centers. It's up to over 50 now that are proposed in this area. They're going to level all the land and just put in all these data centers, wildlife, vegetation, close to homes, close to schools. They're just, mowing everything down and getting their way. And so far, there's citizens groups trying to oppose it, but no cooperation from the authorities. Shapiro, our governor, who wants to be president, wants to eliminate local zoning authority and just streamline it. And Trump is doing the same thing, proposing the same thing. They want these data centers, and it doesn't help the communities. It just helps those who are owners and investors in it. Another rape of this land.
Yeah, and you can get raped three times because it will triple, quadruple the cost of electricity.
Yeah,
You'll have brownouts. They'll cut off the families they'll cut off the people to support the data centers, and and your water resources will disappear
right. And
because it takes tremendous amount of water to cool these systems.
yeah.
And so I don't think that these are viable projects.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we did something on that a few weeks ago where in a way it's a Ponzi scheme because you're saying that the depreciation to keep up with the new technology that has to be reinserted all the time doesn't make them financially viable, correct?
Yeah, the rate of change in the processing and the inputs into these data centers is so high that you have to replace them before you can recover the depreciation. So you have to replace them before you can recover what they cost you in profits. And so what's filling in is new investment because everybody thinks this is the wave of the future. So it's taking a huge amount of investment, and new investment comes in to make up for the lack of any profits. So the system is not paying for itself. It relies on people throwing more of their money into it, and yet it doesn't pay any profits.
Yeah.
So um, the whole thing is now raising questions. Is this going to be another blowout like 2007, 8? And this Michael Burry guy, the great short person, the one who saw what was going on with the mortgage derivatives,
Yeah.
uh, he's now talking about shorting AI. And I saw today that Oracle's earnings are 40% off their peak. Another one of the big AI companies, the earnings are 60% off.
Wow.
So, in other words, if people don't keep throwing money in despite the lack of profitability, it's going to blow up, collapse. They had these CPU processors. They worked uh, in sequence. Before they're 3 years old, they come up with GPU processors that work simultaneously, so they're a lot faster. So everything in those data centers was outmoded, and it hadn't returned $1
Yeah.
of profit. Well, you can see it's an impossible situation. It's and and I read something. I didn't have a chance to check it up, but it said the Fed is now returning to uh, quantitative easing.
Yeah.
Well, clearly the Fed has figured out they're going to have to bail out AI.
Hmm.
And the Fed will end up supplying the funds just by pushing a button. And there's no longer any connection between success and reward in American capitalism. You don't have to make profits. The Fed, and of course, Trump all sees this as business good for America, and it's a horrible mistake. And we already don't have sufficient water resources,
Yeah.
and we know the situation in California and Texas, and even here in Florida, the the water that comes out of North Georgia, Chattahoochee River into the Apalachicola River, it's all dammed up. It's up there in Atlanta's hands. And so Alabama's running dry, Florida's running dry, the Apalachicola Bay, they lost all the oysters.
Yeah.
So they destroyed that part of the economy, and it's and there are days, even weeks, when you can't do the rafting in the Colorado River because there's not enough water. And what were the big dams out there? The Hoover Dam,
Yeah.
they've dried up. The lakes, the vast lakes have shrunk.
Well,
Uh,
around here, there's a lot of wells, and in other areas where they place these, the wells have dried up
yeah,
and been contaminated. There are some of these data centers on three supposed benefits to the community. That it's going to lower electricity rates, and we've seen in other areas, and as you've pointed out, it raises appreciably the electric rates in other areas where they've been placed. They claim that it's going to bring a lot of jobs into the area after the construction of these huge data centers, the physical plants. There's few permanent jobs because it's all computerized. And then they're also claiming that it's going to lower property taxes. But as we pointed out, there is a gigantic gas conversion plant in Dunmore and Troop next to near Scranton, next to a gigantic landfill, the Naples Keystone landfill, and that converts the methane gas from the landfill into usable gas that they sell to the utilities. And it was built at $160 million. They have billions of dollars in signed contracts for the next 20 years. It is assessed for a mere $335,000, which is less, much less than the assessments on most homes in this area.
yeah.
So that's a ripoff. So none of those supposed benefits are real. It's just a lot of the insiders are going to make a hell of a lot of money until it goes bust, and then the land is denuded of the
Yeah,
livestock, of the
that's right.
wildlife, of fauna, flower, everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know,
Well, that's true. This is, one of my themes is that the government only serves Israel and vested interest, organized lobbies.
yeah,
And, or I should say, they serve fraud, Israel, and organized lobbies. And that's all any government budget goes for. It never does anything for any people.
so, between all this and the immigrant invasions and strident liberated women, how long do we have with our current way of life? What's left of it?
I don't think very long because the belief system has been destroyed.
Yeah, yeah,
And you see, even the white youth are no longer enculturated into their own civilization. Um, they say we are colonizers,
yeah.
but in fact, we're being colonized.
We're being colonized.
That's what's happening. You got 42 Muslim mayors.
Yeah.
You know,
New
we've
York City, New York City, the big New York City about to have a Muslim mayor.
um, yeah, uh, and you see the Spanish language is becoming an American language.
Yeah,
You can't avoid it. You can't call anywhere without listening to it in Spanish. So we are being colonized. Um, and the Muslim communities, as numerous as they are, I would imagine the Hispanic ones are much greater.
yeah,
So we're being crowded out of our positions, university faculty. If you go look at university faculty, try to find a white man.
yeah,
There'll be a lot of women, there'll be blacks, there'll be Indians, Muslims, Orientals, especially Chinese, Koreans. And it's now starting to happen as the presidents of these
yeah,
universities
yeah,
and executives. And you have to ask yourself, how did this all come about? It was encouraged. It was, um,
yeah,
I had a, well, I could go on about this forever, but I think that we're being erased in many ways, not just displaced by immigrant invaders, but we're being erased because we are no longer enculturated in Western mores, Western values. We don't know the kids today don't know, they don't even know who the founding fathers were.
yeah, yeah,
And they basically don't know anything. They basically don't know anything. And except that they're racist.
yeah. Yeah, some of the Fox News, as we discussed, it has its women, it has its own slants, but they do man in the street. I know MOS it's called in the industry, where they're interviewing these kids, about who the founding fathers were, who the first president was, who did we fight in the Second World War? No concept at all of
Yeah.
even recent history. They're on their phones or, it's all social media and, it's a real erasure of what had been common knowledge of,
Uh,
what the country's all about.
I can't have a conversation with them because they don't know enough to talk about anything.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just, it's not. Well, Larry, we've gone on here for 50 minutes. It's longer than usual. We covered a variety of topics, and people should understand that these data centers are a extreme threat to their community in many ways, and particularly through electricity usage and water usage. And it makes no sense because both of these are already in short supply. A state like Texas has brownouts
Yeah.
already without data centers,
Yeah.
without all electric cars. So you see, they undertake activities without any thought about where the resources to support them. How can we have all electric cars? Where look at the electric demand. Where does it come from? We add that the data centers, the water that takes to cool it. When water is becoming something people fight over.
Yeah.
Alabama, Georgia, Florida, they're in perennial lawsuits. And I'm sure it's the same way everywhere in the West. So uh, the whole, what we really need is a form of industrial planning where somebody sits there and says, oh, you want to build 50 data centers in Pennsylvania? Well, let's see, what is the electric generating capability? What is the water supply? Uh, uh, what are you doing to guarantee that there will be sufficient electricity and water for the communities to continue to exist while you tap into these resources? So these questions don't get asked.
Yeah.
Uh, Somebody should have said, hey, look, if we're already short of water and housing, and we already got all these homeless people, why do we need 30 million more illegal immigrants? Where are we going to put them? We've already got foul air. Uh, the big cities in Arizona are sitting on shrinking aquifers.
Yeah.
Oh, and you want 30 million more people? What? There's this notion, oh, the market takes care of it. Well, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Um,
I can remember Biden when he was running for president. This is on tape. I've seen it a number of times. It may be erased by now, but he actually said surge to the border. The United States could easily handle 25, 30 million more
yeah,
immigrants. Surge to the border. And it happened. He
yeah,
actually said that.
yeah. Well, no, it was a policy. Yeah, and we've got the working class living on credit cards, making the minimum payment, building up debt, and we dump millions of more people on them to be supported.
Yeah.
So, um, and yet, what do the conservatives think the threat is? Russia, China, Iran, Venezuela, Venezuela. It's just, it's mindless, Larry. So how can a mindless people survive? They can't. You think the Chinese and Russians are this stupid? No, they're not.
You know, even 20, 30 years, even 30, 20 years ago, the concept that the US could go under and fall apart and
Yeah,
driven down, I mean, it wasn't even conceivable. And
yeah.
now, it can soon be a reality. It's just incredible what's occurred and how
It's,
it's
it's
accelerated.
incredible. Yeah. And see, and Trump himself in his national security document that he released, um, he said that Europe faces civilizational erasure
Yeah,
and will be unrecognizable in 18 years. Well, why does he think it's any different here?
yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's not any different here, Mr. President.
And even at
That's
the
the real that's the real issue, and it gets no one addresses it. No one talks about it. Nothing is done. And so I think we don't have 18 years. That's my view.
Wow.
There's, you know, when you don't have a working class that can pay its bills, who do you tax to pay for the immigrants?
Yeah.
What's the Muslim uh, mayor of New York City going to do now that he's got 150,000 immigrant invaders living on New York streets when one of his predecessors established a homeless right to shelter?
Right.
Well, where's he going? And New York's already broke, and all of his programs will break it more. Where's he going to get the money to shelter 150,000 people? I mean, that's bigger than a lot of American cities. And so the thoughtlessness is rampant. And what they argue about and do is nonsensical, it's pointless. And it's a total divorce from reality. There's nothing in reality they deal with. They live in a make-believe world. They've got fake narratives serving their agendas, and this is the way the country is. It's not even a real country. I think we better end this. It's gone an hour, which I think is long for your crew, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was a good discussion. It brought some things out, and people need to understand the universities are their enemies. They're not educating kids. They're indoctrinating kids against themselves
Yeah.
if the kids are white. They're being indoctrinated against themselves. The belief system is being destroyed. That's the main purpose of American education. That's mainly what it does. You send your kid to a university, you're paying for him to be dispossessed.
Yeah.
Self-belief.
Yeah.
That's all you're going to get.
And they used to be centers of critical thinking, logical thinking. Now it's propaganda. On that note, Paul, we'll end this another
Okay,
dire
Larry.
discussion.
I enjoyed talking to you.
I enjoy it too, but it's like, marching. I keep thinking of the Yates slouching towards Bethlehem. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold.
Yeah,
We'll sign
yeah.
off with that.
All right.
All right.
Later.
Thanks very much for joining us once again. To be continued. Yikes.